Welcome to ANN In Depth. Today we're going to talk about cooking healthy dinners during COVID-19. Well, more specifically, the lockdown. How have you been dealing with cooking? Have you just taken out every day ordering from a different food service, or have you actually cooked? Most of the time, we used to say that we didn't have time to cook, but now we seem to be at home and we still don't cook, many of us. So let's talk to two people that have been thinking about cooking for a while. They're very healthy, and I would like to introduce you to them. So first, I'm going to bring in Cory. Cory from Loma Linda University. He's a professor there, and he's going to tell us all about what he teaches and how he can help us in the subject in a moment. I also want to introduce you to Pashal, who just graduated in something that will help us. Pashal, let me start with you. What did you just graduate on? Tell us more about that.
I just graduated from the University of North Florida with a Bachelor's of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics. And it sounds long and complicated, but it's really not. I just like to learn about food and how that interacts with the body. So that's pretty much what my degree was in.
Fantastic. My specialty in that is not just, it's liking the food itself. I like not talking about it. I just like eating it a lot. So we'll get to talk to that about that in a moment. Cory, tell me about you. What do you teach there at Loma Linda University?
So I teach in the Department of Nutrition and Dietetics in the School of Allied Health, and my specialty is in administrative dietetics. So I teach students how to run kitchens. I am a chef by training. I'm also a registered dietitian, and I differ a bit from Pashal in that I focus on the culinary component, not the clinical component of nutrition.
Okay, what's the difference? Tell us more about that.
Well, the culinary aspect is running the kitchen. So actually being able to cook is a big part of that. So that's what I'm teaching our students. We start them off with their basic kitchen skills. We're working on knife skills. We're working on cooking methods. I do a lot of tastings with them and help them to engage with the different types of foods and hopefully giving them an experience of foods that maybe they haven't tried before. Really trying to expand their horizons when it comes to an understanding of what is out there in the world as far as ingredients go. So we start them with those type of basics, and then we move more into the operation of the kitchen, working on menus, working on forecasting to know how many customers to expect. And then we go all the way into working on business management topics. So we're doing things like finance and marketing and just all of the aspects of running a kitchen, running a business, running the area of food that has to do with physically feeding people. We interface constantly with the clinical side of dietetics, which is looking at what specific needs a body has and how do we fulfill those specific nutrition needs. So there's a lot of interplay between the two areas within nutrition. Just as a side, there's also a third area of nutrition, that is the community side of it. So we have 3 domains in nutrition, and I just happen to teach in that one specific area of kitchen management.
So I'm going to come back to the community element because I never thought about that. So that's an interesting part. But let's talk about the preparation. So if you're listening to this here, if you're listening to this, and your dream is to start a vegetarian or vegan restaurant that is very nutrition driven and fantastic in taste, then talk to Cory, go to Loma Linda, do the course, and it will be absolutely ready to do it.
That is true.
Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. You would have all the skills and the knowledge that you need to do that if you came and did a degree with us.
That's amazing. I honestly did not know that was taught. And to be taught at an Adventist university makes it even better. Yep. I suppose we have, thousands of schools worldwide and many different institutions that have kitchens. So, of course, that is something that would be very important to learn. Now, Pashal, let me come to you. You handle more of the health aspects of nutrition, right? So what you eat and how it affects your health. Tell me more about that. And why did you want to study that?
So I started that because my family actually was very health conscious growing up. My brother owns gyms, and I always grew up in that surrounding. And I was previously in a different major and then switched over to nutrition. And just having that background of being in a gym and seeing how people can really transform their health, just not only physically, but with the foods that they're putting into their body. interested me, as well as my father being sick. He was in the hospital from having two massive strokes. And so that really made me want to learn about nutrition and prevent people from going through that, or family members having to see a family member be sick or laying up in the hospital, just from simple changes that they can add into their diet every day that can prevent these diseases that are so prevalent now.
Fascinating. In my deep knowledge of pop science, which I absorb from different articles that I read here and there, it seems to me that up to 20 years ago, science didn't really take seriously the impact of food in health. It seemed that it was, look, what really matters is these drugs, and if you do that and the other, then you'll be fine. But what you eat didn't seem to have such an impact. It seemed, in my perception. I don't know if that's true, but in the last 20 years, certainly, there's been quite a bit of research, it seems, on the impact of what you eat to different health conditions. Is that the case, or is this just my perception?
From what I have just learned throughout school so far is that we're seeing a trend of people that are eating more red meat and different processed meats have a higher tendency to get these diseases such as cancer, heart disease, and things like that. Whereas you see the different aspect of it, vegetarians and vegans, they're on the lower side of getting these diseases. And I'm not sure if Cory could maybe add some more input to that as well. And
certainly, we're seeing a huge social interest in nutrition in today's world. And that it's interesting that you say the last 20 years, Sam, because the history of it goes back 100 years. I mean, the Adventist Church was really a very big player in the early days of this entire movement to look at what we're eating and how it impacts our bodies. But it never really gained any traction. It wasn't a idea that really became part of the social consciousness until very modern history. But I know on our campus here at Loma Linda, we made one of the very first meat analogs that was available in the marketplace in the United States, right here on our campus. And that is just one example of how we were really innovators in this entire idea of healthy eating and healthy living. But yes, in today's world, it is becoming a big trend. I have seen lots of health trends come and go within food service. I'm hoping that this isn't just another wave that we happen to be riding. The idea of plant-based foods that are available right now is really a huge growing area in the prepared foods marketplace. And I'm really excited about that. I hope to see that really continue to grow and develop. So yeah, I think we're on the verge of a massive change in the way that people eat. But yes, a lot of new research, a lot of research coming out of Loma Linda, but certainly plenty of other places too that are looking at the health impacts of not only the bad things that we're eating, but also what are the positive things that we should be adding to our diet that can help with either maintaining, managing a healthy diet, a healthy body, or reverting away from a disease state and back to a healthy state. So it's very fascinating. And what we're learning right now within the industry is absolutely it's going to change a lot for how people eat, I think.
About time too. I was watching this film called Tell the World, which is a great film about the history of the Adventist Church. You mentioned the Adventist Church. This is an Adventist channel. And if you're interested in that, you can go to YouTube and just type Tell the World. And it's a film. It's 2.5 hours or so. So take your time. But halfway through that film, there are some writings that Ellen White writes about health. And it's fascinating because it's things like, don't eat sugar in excess, avoid meat, and many others, stimulants, etc. And this was the 1860s and 1870s, right? The stuff that we're talking about today that you still see trending on Instagram and Twitter today is the stuff that she wrote about that science is now picking up on 150 years ago. It's a crazy thought that it took this long to catch up. But more than that, why have we been so quiet as Adventists in presenting this to the world before science caught up. Was there anything that we could have done? I honestly, I don't know what it would have been, because Loma Linda existed for a while. What do you call those chicken things that you create? It's not chicken, obviously. It's meatless. Do you remember what their names? They're kind of shaped like.
There's at least 8 companies right now that are making a product similar to what you're talking about. So I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
90s. In the 90s, Loma Linda used to create this little, I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, they used to create this thing that made it kind of tasted like chicken, but it was a very different taste. And I was in a boarding school in England, and the highlight of my week was the day that they cooked that thing from Loma Linda. And I remember that. Obviously, you don't forget those things, because boarding school food leaves much to be desired. Although the first 3 months are always delicious. After that, you kind of get used to the taste, and you long for something different, except for the Loma Linda food that I ate there. So let me ask you this, Cory. If your students cook some food that is very nutritious, but it tastes awful, do they still pass?
Good question. And the answer is yes, because of the fact that they are students. That is the venue where they are expected to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. So yes, not everything that we cook in our kitchen is something that would entirely be palatable. We do from time to time have failures. I do my best to oversee the students and their work and make sure that that doesn't happen. But I tell my students constantly, if you're afraid to fail, then you're not going to succeed. And they have to be able to be given enough latitude to be able to try things that they wouldn't normally try. So many of my students walk into my kitchen and are intimidated by either myself and my experience, or by our amazing facilities. We have an absolutely phenomenal kitchen that I'm extremely glad to be a part of. And they walk in and they think, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to use a knife. I've never really done this type of cooking. And then I walk up to them and say, guess what, everybody? We're making lunch for 150 people today. And the eyes just get this big, and you're thinking, whoa, what's going on? So yes, there's a huge intimidation factor. And if you don't feel like you might do something wrong, then probably you are not going to be able to learn as much as you could in that scenario.
Is it like those cooking shows? You know, people watch the
You mean like
tension.
Hell's
that builds.
Kitchen?
Yeah. Instead of Hell's Kitchen, we could call it Health Kitchen. Here's an idea, Hope Channel. You could take this seriously and produce something.
Hell's
That would be.
We'll do the opposite of Hell's Kitchen. No, I tell my students from time to time, if they don't listen to me and do what I say, I'll turn my kitchen into Hell's Kitchen.
Although, you generally cook vegetarian food, is that right?
We do. We are a lacto-ovo campus, so a vegetarian campus. So everything that we produce on our campus is meat-free. We do use some dairy, some eggs, but those are used in moderation. We really don't find that that is something that is needed a lot anymore. So most of what we're creating is totally vegetarian, no meat products at all. And
I see a vegetarian kitchen with lots of swearing. I just cannot imagine it. So Hell's Kitchen is not really a possibility there. But
no,
sorry, I interrupted. You were saying.
I do, because of the fact that we are a nationally accredited nutrition program, I do have to at least introduce the cooking of meat to my students. So I do have one day of a lecture and a demo where we do meat fabrication and meat cookery, because that is something that's required of our accrediting body. But for the most part, yes, we are a totally lacto-ovo vegetarian program and campus.
Are you guys making the vegetarian food from scratch? Like everything, like the burgers and chicken nuggets or baked chicken?
No, not really.
Okay.
Those things are possible. Yes, we can do those, but on the whole, we don't really have a huge demand for those products. For the most part, we're not trying to simulate meat products in our daily menus. There's so much food available out there in the world. God gave us so many amazing ingredients and so much really cool stuff that we don't really find that we need to recreate that, steak and potatoes or burger and fries or, whatever it is. Those are very traditional menu plans within the United States and American eating patterns. But we try and really look for what are the amazing things that we can do that don't necessarily follow those patterns.
Mhm.
So we're looking at all kinds of ethnic cuisines and we're saying, okay, in this region of the world, what vegetarian thing do they do really well? Let's try that. And we have found that there are amazing vegetarian meal plans all over the world in every single culture, in every ethnicity. And exploring those is something that we find really, really interesting.
Yeah,
I
I've
just
never
realized.
thought about it. Oops, sorry. I never thought about it in that way because I feel like our society is always trying to replicate meat so much when really we should just focus on maybe just incorporating whole foods into our diet. So I like
Yes,
that.
exactly. And when you think about the why it is that we would want to do that, it's because that is our traditional eating pattern. Those are the foods that people know. So it makes sense that that's the kind of thing that you would want to recreate because if you don't, then you're going to have to learn a completely new way of
Yeah.
cooking and eating and feeding yourself. So there's a lot of work involved in it. Also, the fact that it's really easy to cook a chicken breast or a fish fillet or a
Mhm.
beef steak. Really, all you have to do is take it out of the package, put some seasoning on it, put it on a pan, and let it cook, and you've got dinner. That's done.
Yeah.
It's not that easy when it comes to vegetarian foods. And all too often, people want to put every single vegetable they have in their refrigerator into whatever the dish is that they're trying to create. So there's a lot of washing and peeling and chopping and
Mhm.
prepping and all of this stuff. So, yes, there are basic differences between a traditional eating pattern and a vegetarian eating pattern, and you really have to evolve your cooking style into that type of pattern.
Yeah.
I have realized I made a terrible mistake before this interview. I should have eaten. Now I am absolutely starving as you go around the world talking about food. Pachal, tell me about the importance of taste in helping somebody with their nutrition, or should you just focus on here are the things that you should eat
Mhm.
because you'll be healthier, and that's it. What's the importance of taste in
I
that
feel like
meal
it has
plan?
to be definitely a balance. Not everything that's healthy for you tastes good, for sure. Like Brussels sprouts is probably something that I don't really like, but you can add different seasonings or sauces or sides that complement it. That'll make it taste a little bit better. So I feel like the taste is a high component of whether someone's going to eat something or not. And another part of that is maybe if they don't like the taste of something, you can find a different vegetable, fruit, or grain, whatever it is that they're eating, to substitute it. That'll still give them the same nutrients. So, for example, if I don't like bananas because they're mushy, I could still eat a different fruit like an apple or orange and still get some of those micronutrients that I need, but without having the taste or the mushiness of the banana.
So you help people to find, okay, you don't like that, let me try and adapt and give you something else.
Right. Because I mean, like Cory was saying, there is so much that we have available to us. But I feel like we only see, oh, I only like this, or like you were saying with the burgers and the veggie chicken, stuff like that we're used to every day. And maybe if we just branched out a little bit more, tried things that we weren't used to and incorporated that, we can still eat healthy and have those different options.
And is it worth all that effort?
Of
What are the
course.
benefits? What are the benefits to the health of somebody to go through that?
So I feel like in the long run, you might not see it at first. You might see, oh, I don't want to cook this. I don't want to eat all these fruits and vegetables. But over time, it's doing your body good. If I were to just, eat meat all day or processed food, that's going to wear and tear my body down from the inside. But over time, if I'm building my body up with the nutrients that I need every day and incorporating exercise in the long run, that's going to help prevent different diseases from coming into my body, as well as just give me a healthier lifestyle overall. I feel like you are more energized when you eat things like this. Um, you're not as sleepy. You're able to go out and do things. And people all the time, from a meat diet towards maybe just a vegetarian, have always had this different contrast of when I was on the meat diet, I was sleepy, I was sluggish, I never wanted to do anything. Versus when you start incorporating these fruits and vegetables, wow, I've never had this much energy just
Mhm.
from eating an apple. So I feel like it's definitely worth it in the long run, especially if you are are predisposed to some diseases, I think it'd be worth it.
Parents seem to be very tired all the time because children obviously push them to their limits. And do you think that what parents eat, if you're a parent and you're listening to this is specifically for you and for me. What do you think is the effect of changing that diet to their energy levels and their ability to play with the never-ending energy from their children?
I feel like changing that diet over definitely will give them the more energy that they need, as well as if you're a parent, you don't only want to think about yourself, but your children as well. What are you feeding them? If you're giving them sugar, maybe is that why they have that extra energy? Maybe can you substitute juice for water or things like that, as well as in your own diet. If you're drinking sodas and diet teas all day, and then you crash off that caffeine later, you think, oh, I just need to have more of it, when in reality, your body's probably just craving for the nutrients that you need.
And then you don't sleep well, and the cycle goes downhill.
Vicious cycle over and over.
You mentioned Brussels sprouts. I've got a story about Brussels sprouts. I was 14 years old, just arrived in England. I did not speak English. Some people would defend that I still don't. At the time, it was worse. So I arrived in England, and it was Christmas, and I didn't speak any English. A teacher invited me to her house to spend Christmas because I had nowhere else to go. So the table was there, and then she came with this dish, and they were like mini cabbages. I had never seen this before. We don't have Brussels sprouts in Brazil where I grew up. It just doesn't exist. And if it does, my parents certainly didn't know about it, which is great. So I arrived, there they are, the mini cabbages. I like cabbages. I'm going to try this out. And I took 6 or 7 of them, right? Put it on my plate. When I tried one, I realized the mistake immediately, as one does as they eat a Brussels sprout. But I couldn't find a polite way to say, I'm not going to eat these. So I had to eat all 7 of them, pretending that I was enjoying the experience. It was awful. And to this day, I try to avoid them as much as possible. I am much more articulate now on how to not eat them. As you are building up your plate, what are the things that what principles should I use to build a healthy plate in both preparing for the food and one day when we get to restaurants again and when we get to go out and we have the opportunity to just build a plate differently? What sort of things should I have in mind as I'm building that plate? Pashal, still with you.
Okay. So you definitely want to keep your plate colorful. That's the number one thing that I always try to look for. Maybe if you're at a potluck after church or you're over a friend's house, if you can keep your plate as colorful as possible, that's always going to help. If you stick with maybe one color, let's say brown, you've got some potatoes, you've got a meat, and then you add some rice, and then you just have a plate full of starches. If I try to add some different colors around, maybe some green or yellow, then I've got a salad, I've got some different vegetables, maybe some fruit, and then I also have a carb or a starch, rice, potatoes as well. So that keeps your plate just a little bit more balanced. And another thing you can do, because I think portion control definitely helps with that as well. Sometimes if you use a smaller plate, that'll help you to not overeat. Sometimes we'll get just a big plate out of the cabinet and we're like, oh, that looks like a little bit, I'll add a little bit more. And before you know it, we're eating 2 or 3 servings of foods when we only needed 1. But Cory, I don't know how they do this in a restaurant. Do you guys try to keep the plates colorful? Do you stick to one?
Working in restaurants, working in food service is challenging because we are really torn between these two concepts of, one, making the food healthy, making it as nutritious as we can for our guests, but at the same time that we have to present a plate that they're willing to purchase, that is attractive enough that they want to actually go out to that facility and buy that particular food. So what is it that people want? We have to be able to provide that. But at the same time, we want to be able to provide food that's going to be as nutritious as we can. So how do we find that balance? And that's the biggest challenge that most food service facilities face at this point. People really want what I guess what people say is that they want value for their meal. For the amount of money that they're going to spend on that meal, they want a good value, which in most people's mind means a very large portion. They want to have a big amount of food. So essentially, if you aren't taking some of it home, you're not getting your money's worth, like, is kind of the idea. So we struggle with that a lot too. But freshness, bringing in the freshest possible ingredients that we can, and really not manipulating that fresh ingredient too much in the kitchen, giving it to the customer in its very finest natural form as possible is a big one that we're working with. But also incorporating whole grains. We're really trying to get as much of the whole product into the food as we can, reducing the amount of fat and sodium and sugar. And how do you do that when you're creating something like a sauce, which is generally based on those three things? So there are changes to the way that customers are looking at the food. We're trying to adjust how the culture of food sees what restaurants do. And again, trying to bring in those cultural components, those things that are already being done that people recognize that are healthy or that are attractive, and trying to get people to recognize the food and be able to get those customers to come in because of that. So it can be very difficult in food service.
There's not many times I'm going to speak to a culinary pro, so I have to ask, is there like a golden rule or key to cook Brussels sprouts to make them taste good?
Yes, there is. And if you're thinking about Brussels sprouts, you also have to lump into that asparagus and cabbage. Those are all the same class of food. And if you overcook them, you get very bitter flavor compounds.
That's what
So
I get.
whenever you're cooking those things, if they start to change color, if they lose that really brilliant, vibrant, bright green color, they're overcooked. Broccoli is a tremendously overcooked vegetable. Really, those things should be cooked to the point where they're just beginning to soften, and that's it. What we typically will do is, if I'm cooking like asparagus, I'll trim the skin off the outside of each stalk of asparagus with a vegetable peeler. So that allows the heat to absorb really quickly and not degrade the vegetable. When it comes to things like Brussels sprouts and broccoli, I'll cut with a paring knife into the stem of the broccoli about halfway up. That lets hot water get into that stem, which is the part of the broccoli that's going to take the longest to cook. It's the densest part. So by the time the stem is cooked, if you haven't cut into it, you've really overcooked that flowerette. Same with Brussels sprouts. If you just take a knife and you push a knife into that stem end and just make a little X mark down there, it lets water get in there and it cooks them really quickly. So get them into the boiling water, well seasoned with some salt, cook them just until they're barely soft, get them out and serve them right away. You'll have a much, much more flavorful, good tasting product. Okay. Now, I will say, even with Brussels sprouts, it is really difficult to get that magic moment when they're just done. And so what I have done in the past, which makes them very attractive, is to toss them with a little bit of honey just to glaze them after they've cooked. And that really balances that kind of bitter quality in their flavor.
I'll have to try that. That sounds really good, actually.
There you go.
I'm going to forward this video to so many people. It's fantastic. Little tips and tricks on how to cook your vegetables to get them to perfection. You didn't think you were going to get that on an A&N show, huh? Okay, good. Let's move on to the next topic that we have here, which is substitutions. We alluded to that a little bit before, but let's dive into this, which is, I really want fries, but I shouldn't. I really want this, but I shouldn't. Is there a way to teach the brain to substitute those desires, those cravings, that dopamine sort of rush? What are some of the techniques for helping somebody to go from unhealthy to more healthy things? Any of you?
Yes, there certainly are techniques. Some of those techniques are psychological. So we can do so much with nutrition and with culinary, but you have to be able to make that leap for yourself as well. It's a two-way street. So if you're trying to substitute something like French fries and you say, French fries are bad for me, so I don't want to eat French fries. What I would suggest from a nutrition standpoint is, one, cut back on the amount of French fries you're eating. That's a really good first step. If you try and just cut out French fries entirely, especially if there's something you're used to eating, you've been eating for a long time, they're a comfort food for you, you're not going to be able to stay away from them. You're going to end up going back to French fries. But if you slowly wean yourself away from it and then substitute something else in its place, and I would suggest roasted potatoes. That's a low fat, still in the same reign of potato product that might satisfy that craving or that need. But trying to just find a better option and to eat less of the things that you think are bad for you is probably the best first step.
So instead of just getting rid of it, you kind of make, you know, you decrease the bad
Exactly.
and increase the good slowly.
It's just like exercise. You can't go from the couch to running a marathon in one day. You're going to have to
Mm.
step yourself into it. And I think eating plans, eating patterns are the same way. If you're going to change something that you've been doing for your whole life, don't expect that you're going to do it overnight. That's an unrealistic expectation to put on yourself. But if you slowly make those changes and be conscious about it all the time, and what am I eating? Why am I eating it? What is the purpose of this thing that I'm trying to put in my mouth? That's when you're going to start to really be able to make effective change for yourself on the long term.
I think we also have
Excellent.
to think about the big picture too. We'll spend $3 at McDonald's to get a large fry. You can spend $3 at the store to get a bag of potatoes. Do the same thing at home. It might take a little bit longer, but it's going to be healthier for you. And we have so many different options now that can speed up the process. Like you said, you can bake them and do roasted potatoes. There's air fryers now. It takes like 10, 15 minutes in the air fryer.
Yes.
You can fry them on top of the stove. And I think any of those options would still be healthier than you going to go get some processed fast food. As well as there's some different substitutions. There's a yucca plant, there's carrots, zucchini. You can make fries pretty much out of anything now. And it's all about finding the balance of what you want. And then again, that taste comes into play a role as well. If you like the taste of zucchini, maybe try zucchini fries and switch it out once or twice a week during that time that you would just get regular fries. And like you said, just slowly start incorporating these things in to help you make that change.
Well, I would
noticed
like to also make another observation, and that is that as an industry, we have identified ingredients that are unhealthy. I mean, there was a huge push for a long time to remove all fat from the diet. And what did we do as food service? We had to find a way of substituting that mouth feel that fat brings to food. So in order to do that, we added a lot of sugar. We added a lot of other ingredients to foods that should have never even been there. So we just created a whole new problem. So be careful when you're thinking about this idea of substitution. Make sure the thing that you're substituting is actually healthier than the thing that you were originally eating. We've made that mistake too often, and I think that's a big trap that people fall into.
There is something that I notice in many ingredients in America since I moved here, something to do with corn syrup, whatever that is called. What is that? Why is it added to food, and what effects does it have?
High fructose corn syrup, standard.
That's the one, high fructose corn syrup. That's right.
Yeah. So there are different types of sugars, fructose, lots of different basic sugars. Each one of them has a different sweetening profile, a different amount or concentration of sweetness. Fructose is very sweet for the volume of product that you're eating. So if you have a high fructose corn syrup, you don't have to use very much of it to get a huge amount of sweetness. The food industry likes that because it reduces their ingredient costs while still enabling them to produce the same product. We have had issue with it in nutrition because fructose has in some studies been shown to add to weight gain. So we have encouraged people to decrease the amount of high fructose corn syrup that they're eating. But what is corn syrup? It is the starch from corn that has been enzymatically broken down into its simple sugar components. So it's taking a starch, which isn't sweet on its own, and converting it into essentially sugar. And it is, we have a tremendous amount of corn in the United States, so it's an easily accessible sweetener that we have available.
And even savory things have it. It's fascinating to me. Um,
That is
let
because
me.
it is what's called an invert sugar. It's a liquid sugar instead of a solid at room temperature. So it adds moisture and it adds other food textural qualities that other types of sugars cannot bring.
That reminds me of like just the whole culture of today when we see high fructose corn syrup, or if there's a certain amount of grams of sugar in a product, people want to use different sweetener alternatives like Truvia and stevia, things like that. Do you think that that's just as bad as having that regular sugar that we would have in the food, or is it a good substitution? Or
Yeah, that is challenging. I mean, from a culinary standpoint, there are some substitutions you can make and some that you cannot. One of the exercises I do with my students is that I get out every single different kind of sugar and sugar substitute that we have in our kitchen, and we taste them all side by side. And I can tell you from experience that there's a huge difference between the sweetness of granulated sugar and the sweetness of stevia. They are not the same product, they are not interchangeable. When I'm baking, when I'm cooking, I cannot just take one sugar and substitute it for the other. They have different amounts of sweetness. They have different properties within the cooking science. They're not interchangeable. So yes, there are certainly times when I can use some other artificial sweetener or natural sweetener, but especially in baking, I have to be very, very careful.
Let's talk about fad diets. They always come. So, Pashal, the latest diet, you've got the keto stuff, and then you've got the 30 days, and you've got lots of different types of diets. And they seem to provide lots of results for people. Tell me more about these. Should we jump on them? Should we avoid it? Should we just try to get some level of normality for the future that is healthy? What are your thoughts on these diets?
if you see a diet and someone is trying to get you to join this diet or this community, I would say run the opposite way. We don't need to throw our bodies into a diet. And I think, again, that's a misconception that this society has. A 20-day detox where you learn 30 pounds. First of all, it's unhealthy. You shouldn't be losing weight that fast. And then second of all, what things are you putting in your body to lose that amount of weight? We have to think about more than just the end result. We have to think, are these chemicals that are going to damage my body in the long run? For personal experience, I have an aunt that would take all the health supplements that would come out, and it ended up damaging her thyroid, and she had to be hospitalized for months. But we don't think about those long-term effects when we just jump into a diet. Just like you had mentioned, the keto diet, this is a very popular diet now, and it's been around for a long time. People think, oh, well, I just have to cut out fruits and carbs, and then I'll drop 5 pounds every week. I'll get to my goal weight, my goal body. But people are going about it in an unhealthy way. So I've seen people on the keto diet that will just eat nothing but meat and cheese, and that's it. So we have to think about what is that doing on the inside of my body as well. We don't need to necessarily jump into diets. It's, like I said, finding a balance, incorporating whole foods into your everyday lifestyle, fruits, vegetables, your grains, and then add in that protein source, whatever it may be. You don't need to completely cut out food groups in order to reach a specific goal that you might have.
Cory, any thoughts on fad diets?
You know what? We've seen so many of them come and go. And the reason that they go is because they don't provide a long-term fix. It didn't take you 3 days to gain the extra 20 pounds that you want to get off. And the body, if it takes a long time for the body to make a change in one direction, it's going to take a long time for the body to make a change in the other. It's not about a diet, it's about lifestyle. It's about making the correct choices on a regular basis all the time. And if you're making the wrong choices now, make small fixes in order to get yourself back to a correct eating style.
Whilst we're waiting for the lockdown to end, in terms of cooking, is vegetarian cooking cheaper or more expensive? Does it take longer or is it quicker? Because it seems that we are always running out of time. It doesn't matter how much time we're given. It doesn't matter if our world has changed. We find a way to get busy. And I want I would like you to talk about that balance, that taking the step to cook more instead of just microwaving everything and having it ready in a few minutes. I remember just one generation ago, people used to spend time cooking. Like they would think, okay, I'm going to spend the next hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours, and I'm going to cook. And then we are going to gather around the table and we're going to eat. Um, Certainly 3 generations ago, that certainly was a reality. And that's becoming more and more difficult to find. The idea is just do something in the oven where you just take it away from the packaging, put it in the oven, and wait till it cooks, or the microwave oven. And then everybody gets their plate and they watch something either in their own personal device whilst they eat, or they go to the lounge and they watch it on the television, whatever is on. Um, what effect does that have on health, and how can we change it to go back to cooking if that's desirable? Let's start
Mm.
with Cory and then Pashal.
That is a challenge for me because I love to be around food. I love to eat food. I love to experience food. And when I spend all day in a kitchen preparing a multi-course meal, something that I have put a lot of my own emotion and strength and energy to, and then to sit down and have the people that I have prepared the meal for finish it in 15 minutes, I am, it's really defeating. I'm saddened by that because I want other people to experience the food the same way that I do. I want it to bring them joy. I want it to bring them satisfaction, in not just the idea of this meal is to put nutrients into my body so that my body can function. So yes, I absolutely see what you're saying, Sam, and the change that has happened in society, it is challenging to me. um, is vegetarian food harder to make than a traditional diet? In some ways, yes. In other ways, it's a lot more simple. And if you allow your meal planning to be simple, that I think helps a lot. In restaurants, we go over and above to make our food as attractive as possible, to make it special, to make it unique, to make it different. If you're trying to copy that at home, you're going to spend a lot of time doing something that you probably don't need to spend that much time doing.
Mhm.
Food can be very simple, it can be very straightforward, and that can still be very enjoyable. Right now, here at Loma Linda, one of our researchers is looking at the happy aspect of eating. He looked at chocolate and he said, what effect does eating chocolate have on the brain wave patterns? Does it
Is he still taking
activate?
people for research? Can I take part? I'm sure much of our audience would love to take part in that research.
Wouldn't that be awesome? I think he's actually culminating that research. But what his data has shown is that yes, eating things that are pleasurable does change the way that the brain works. And I think that the idea of sitting down and enjoying a meal with your family, the social aspects of eating, getting that connection to food is very important. I haven't seen specific research on it at this point, but I'm sure that the research would show something very similar to what the chocolate study showed.
You mentioned a community aspect to food earlier. That's the third area. What is that? Is that what you're describing now, or is that entirely different?
No, that's entirely different. So, as a third domain within the nutrition area, the dietetics area, it's looking at the health of communities. It's looking at a bigger picture than just an individual and the nutrients that they need. It's saying, on a more global perspective, what are the trends that we're seeing within the population, and how can we, in maybe change environmental factors or change the way that people interact with food in order to improve the health of the entire community.
I see. Okay, excellent. Pashal, previous question.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts?
I think that definitely this generation is very distracted as we eat. Most of us are on our cell phone or, like you said, watching TV. So I feel like we're not getting connected and really taking that time to enjoy our meals, to slow down and actually spend time with family and the people that are around us too, which can make that experience even more enjoyable. Maybe if we did spend the time doing these things, then cooking wouldn't seem like such a hard task to do. We'd want to go in the kitchen and cook a meal for our family and then all sit down together and enjoy it. But because our society is rush, 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 go, fast food, pick this up, throw it in the oven, we don't really see that time being spent anymore.
Okay. Last question for you. It's divided in two parts. Okay, so and the question goes to both of you. First part: if there was one thing that you could just wipe out from people's psyche in regards to food, what would it be? Okay, so if there was one thing that that they mistakenly believe, that you would go, well, if they stop believing that, their life will be better, what would that be? And then the opposite: if there was one thing that you would inspire our viewers to change and to do or to believe, then what would that be? Let's start with the negative first. What is the one thing that if you had a wish and you say, if everybody could stop believing this nonsense, it would make their lives better? What would it be?
That's a tough one.
That is a tough question. Oh my.
That's all right. Take your time.
One thing that has always challenged me is the fact that, like we were talking about earlier with the Brussels sprouts, people have this idea that I have these things that I like to eat, and that's all I like to eat, and there's nothing else that I'm going to try. And, you know, here in Southern California, here in Riverside, we have a citrus museum, and it's a state park, and there are at least 3,000 different types of citrus that are growing in this one grove. People don't realize the amount of variety in the foods that God provided for us on this planet. When you look at legumes, just the beans that we have available, there's 2,500 varieties of beans out there in the world. And one that really fascinates me that I would love to see at some point in my life, in the very high areas of Peru, the very high altitudes, there is a bean that grows there. But because of the altitude, the water that they boil it in can't get hot enough to actually cook the bean and soften it. And God knew that that was going to be the case. So what he did is he made this bean so that you can cook it in a dry pan and it pops like popcorn, and then you can eat it. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating stuff that's out there in the world. And I would love for people to venture out and actually start to try new things and not say, you know, I don't like Brussels sprouts because I tried them once and they were awful. Maybe try them again and see if maybe it's a different preparation is what you're looking for. So that's the one negative, I guess, that I would say.
And get somebody that watched this video to know how to cook the blessed Brussels sprouts so they don't taste bad.
Sure.
Pashal.
I'm going to have to split my negative into two. So the first part would be that carbs are bad for you, because I've met so many people that are afraid to actually eat. Even my own mother won't eat bread because she thinks it's going to make her gain weight. So I feel like if we got rid of that negative connotation, a lot of people would be able to just eat more and sustain their body with the nutrients that it needs. And then the second part would be that you can only get protein from meat, which is a huge thing that people constantly tell me, oh, if you're a vegetarian, you're not eating enough protein. You can't get it because you can only get it from cows and chickens. But we wouldn't have that protein in the cows and chickens unless they were eating the plants and vegetables around them. So if we eat plants and vegetables, yes, we will have protein. It's just you have to up the amount that you're eating. So if I could get rid of those things, that would be great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with that, Pashal. And the idea that for the most part, there's enough protein in a single portion of pasta for the typical American body. We don't need to eat these huge portions of pure protein in order to fulfill that need.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It seems I was listening to a documentary on Netflix about food, and the doctors there were saying that protein is not really what matters most. What matters most is fiber. Fiber is the stuff that we don't eat enough of. Protein, we just eat enough. I mean, if you eat a normal, at least in Western countries, just a regular diet, whatever that is, without meat, you will get enough protein.
Yes.
The difficulty is fiber. Fiber is a problem. So, okay, now let's talk about the positive. if there was one thing you could help people understand and change, what would it be? As you can see, only easy questions in this program.
Oh yeah.
There are a lot of things that I would suggest. The one that's coming to my mind right now would be people should be eating more nuts and a variety of all kinds of things. Walnuts and almonds have been shown to have health benefits, and they're, well, for one thing, they have plenty of fiber, so you're going to get lots of that. But their fat profiles are very positive. They have plenty of protein.
What's a fat profile?
Just like we were talking about with the different types of sugars and how some of them have different sweeteners, et cetera, sweetness amounts, there are lots of different types of lipids, the building block of fats, and different types of fats interact with the body in different ways. The reason that we've all been told that we shouldn't eat as much red meat, we shouldn't eat as much dairy, we shouldn't eat butter, is because it's a saturated fat type. So those are very harmful to the body. Those are the kind that collect on the interior of the arteries, things like that. But the monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, those types, you can find those things in nuts and in whole grains, and those are the ones that are more beneficial to the human body. In fact, some of them are essential, meaning that we have to have some of them in our diets. So just fats, nuts have a lot of health-giving benefits. So adding a handful of nuts to your diet every day is a good thing.
Fantastic. I'm going to Costco. Pashal.
Something positive.
Or Sam's Club. We're not endorsing any brand here. It could be Costco, it could be Sam's Club, it could be Walmart, it could be ShopRite, it could be Giant, or any of them. They provide nuts.
Yes.
Pashal, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. One positive thing that I would want people to know is that they just don't have to rely on a diet. I think if we just worry about eating whole foods and incorporating them into our everyday diet, I mean, you can't go wrong. And if you want to follow a fad diet and then, lose the weight and possibly gain it back, or it could be detrimental to your health. So I think if we just worried less about dieting and putting all of our focus on it versus just focusing on giving our body nutritious food, then that would be a positive.
I like that idea a lot. Worry less, just eat less of the bad, eat more of the good, find some way to balance it.
Add in the Brussels sprouts.
Well cooked. Fantastic. Okay. I have another question here. Let me go through the list. I think we need another video, Cory, especially with you teaching us how to cook these vegetables, and other products. That would be very helpful. So the team will get to you and have another one where you can demo those things, because those things are very helpful. I'm already thinking of the different ways that I can try the broccoli. I like broccoli raw, actually, with a bit of lime and olive oil.
Sure.
But when you cook it properly, it definitely tastes obviously much better. And I never thought of that, of the aspect. Of course, the little leaves at the top, whatever that's called, they're going to cook much faster than the bottom part. And that's why they're all soggy, they're kind of depressed as you look at them, as they come out, they're all done.
Yes.
There are better ways to cook it. So that's a fantastic way of thinking through how you cook it and what you eat.
You should make a YouTube channel, and I'll subscribe and try to do everything redo it. That's
right. We will start a new channel, ANN in the kitchen. We will go through that. Our producer, I can see her here. She's just laughing to herself, thinking, "Don't even think about it. One is enough." That's excellent, guys. I think we're done for today. Cory, thank you so much for joining us and helping us to understand such practical things, and your thoughts as well. Best of luck with your students. I hope they can cook amazing food that is both delicious and nutritious. And of course, that they can run restaurants. And I cannot wait to go back to them. It's been months. Pashal, thank you so much for your words today. Thank you for helping us with so many different nutritional thoughts for us to process. Best of luck with your career. I hope God blesses you tremendously as you're now graduated and you're probably officially unemployed. So if you need a nutritionist, get in touch with Pashal. That's it. You used to go from university to a job. Now with the academic inflation, you go from university to being unemployed, and then you think, okay, I probably need a master. And then you study. And anyway, it's a new world. Welcome to the digital world. Do you have a YouTube channel, Pashal, or something like that? How can people find you?
I just have an Instagram account, and it's Pashal_, and I just put a bunch of food and some different nutrition tips on there.
Excellent. So please find her there. And Cory, I don't suppose you have a YouTube channel or an Instagram account people can connect to.
Well, we've been talking about a cooking show, and actually we have produced one, and that is Live It in the Kitchen. And it's available from the university's website. So I do have a chef tips section within that website. So if you want to know more about cooking specific vegetables, there are some videos on that.
Excellent. Fantastic. Guys, thank you so much. Let's have a word of prayer. Pasha, would you mind praying for us and for the people at home who may have been struggling with cooking, that God may give them some inspiration and the courage to get on with it?
Yes. Dear Lord, thank you so much for allowing us all to just meet virtually online today and be able to spend some time talking about the health of our bodies and different things that we can incorporate to live a better lifestyle for you as well as for ourselves. We ask now that we take these tips that we have learned today and the different information and put it towards an action in our life to live a better and healthier lifestyle. Thank you for everything that you continue to do for us each and every day. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. You've been watching A&N In Depth. If you liked what you just heard, then share it with a friend or two who may need to cook vegetables better. If you are a daughter or a son still living at home, maybe your mom or dad can benefit from these videos. Share it on your social media channels, and I will see you next week.